Week 3 of the NFL season is over, and there are some clear running backs now on your waiver wire that you need to be adding. I'm talking about guys who can instantly start for you this week and be a top 20 running back, or guys that you can stash, and if something happens to the starter, they're an RB1. And we'll start with Braylon Allen, the Jets rookie running back, who kind of fits both of those categories. You can start him right now. Some weeks he'll be a top 20 running back like he was in week 2 very recently, and then also if something happens to Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, in my opinion, is easily a top 10 back in the NFL and for fantasy. Because we've seen Breece Hall see a 3-down roll, and despite Breece Hall seeing that 3-down roll right now through 3 weeks after their Thursday night football game, Braylon Allen is still seeing 8, 10 plus opportunities a game and being very productive on this usage. And we just saw it last week in week 2. You can see right here on Fantasy Life. In week 1, he only played 16% of the snaps, the rookie in his first game. Okay, nothing crazy. But in week 2, that increased to 36% of the snaps. And not only was it the snaps that he saw, but the production came through. On 9 touches in that game, scores multiple touchdowns both on the air and on the ground. That won't happen every game, of course. But the fact that on just 9 touches, he's totaling 33 rushing yards, 23 receiving, going for about 7-8 yards per touch. This was great to see. And then he was coming into a short week on Thursday Night Football, where for all players it's tough, but especially for rookies it's a tough turnaround. And despite that, you can see Braylon Allen in week 3 right here still plays 30% of the snaps, and he goes out there again and has a solid game. 14 touches in this one. He goes for 68 total yards. He's still averaging over 5 yards per touch, putting up nearly 10 fantasy points. For back-to-back weeks now, this rookie is a flex option for you. You could have put him in the flex and been fine in week 2 and week 3. And what happens now? Well, now he's a priority waiver wire add, in my opinion. And if you're not familiar with him, this guy's absolutely insane. He's 235 pounds, and despite being a rookie, he's 20 years old. One of the youngest players to ever enter the NFL, was the youngest player in this year's NFL draft. And here's the thing. A lot of people were down on him. He fell to the 4th round because of the fact that, oh, how fast is this guy if he's so big? And he kind of alluded to that recently on his Twitter, as you can see right here. Everyone wanted to see me run in my underwear to decide if I was a good football player, because he did not go into that. But this was actually a business decision. He didn't go to the combine and run because he was dealing with an injury. Now, some people could say it was an injury, but it was an injury that he suffered at the end of his college season. And during that college season, he actually played, you can see over here, he played at Wisconsin all 3 years, and he started at 17 years old. He actually started as a defensive back. Immediately, they were like, nah, you're going to play running back, dude. You're pretty fucking good. And look at this. He goes for over 1,200 yards in his first ever year playing running back. Then he goes for 1,200 more yards. Finishes it with over 1,000 total yards when you factor in the receiving. This guy was averaging over 1,100 yards per season, never playing running back in the Big Ten. So yeah, I'm not totally surprised that the 235-pound grown man, even though he's only 20 years old, is finding some success in the NFL, especially behind an offensive line in the Jets that has looked good the last 2 weeks. They invested a lot in it. Breece Hall's still the number 1 running back in this backfield and in all fantasy football, but Braylon Allen has proven that he should be on your roster, not only because he could be a flex option, but if anything happens to Breece Hall, you're looking at like the next Jordan Mason. We've mentioned this in the past. Something happened to Christian McCaffrey. Jordan Mason was the best running back you should be adding, and that worked out. I'm saying it now again for Braylon Allen and the Jets behind Breece Hall. Now, the next man I want to talk about is Chuba Hubbard, and I know what the people are already going to start to say. They're going to get their Twitter fingers ready, their comment fingers. This guy's not available in my league. Oh my God, what kind of league is this guy? He's available right now in 55% of fantasy leagues. So he's available out there in a good amount of the people watching this. But for those people, if Chuba Hubbard and Braylon Allen aren't available, don't worry. We're going to have some super deep sleepers who are available in 99% of leagues coming up. But here's the thing I want to talk about. Chuba Hubbard's on the Panthers. The Panthers offense scored on just 12% of their offensive drives under Bryce Young through the first 2 weeks of the season. Then in week 3 with Andy Dalton, 64% of their drives, 7 out of 11 they score on, compared to just 12%, which was actually 3 out of 24. So the point being is this offense looked a lot better in week 3, and I think that's going to continue under Andy Dalton, who's actually getting good protection from this Panthers offensive line. But here's the thing. We saw Chuba Hubbard actually produce like the only Panthers player to produce in week 2 when they only had 84 total yards. He goes out there, he averages over 6 yards per carry. Between his rushing and receiving, he goes for 76 yards, a decent performance of almost 12 fantasy points. I mean, that's definitely solid. You're not upset about that, especially based on how bad the Panthers played in week 2. And then week 3 comes, and Chuba Hubbard continues to command this backfield like he did in week 2, seeing the far majority of the snaps, about 60%. Similar happens here. He plays 43 according to PFF of 74 snaps. You scroll over and look at this usage. 21 carries for Chuba Hubbard in a game where the Panthers actually led the entire time by multiple scores, compared to just 7 for Miles Sanders. He adds in 5 targets. Now, what is this total? It totals a massive day. 26 total touches, so this is like obvious. This guy should not be on your waiver wire at this point. Between his rushing and receiving, goes for almost 170 total yards, scores a touchdown, 30-plus fantasy points on the day for Chuba Hubbard against the Raiders. Incredible. So this is now back-to-back solid performances, and obviously an elite and great one for Hubbard, so he should not be available in over 50% of leagues. He is the number 1 running back waiver wire add this week. So he's the priority add, and here's the thing. He's going to get at least one more week as the clear-cut starter, because yes, Jonathan Brooks is going to come back, the rookie that they traded up for in the second round to take out of Texas, the best running back in the NFL draft that I believe and a lot of people believe. But that doesn't mean that he's guaranteed to come back in week 5. And although that's where it trends right now and that's what we're expecting, even if he comes back in week 5, he's not going to immediately be the starting running back, because here's the deal. Chuba Hubbard just took those chances away. I think Brooks by like week 6, 7, 8, maybe even later will be the starting running back here. He's that talented, but Hubbard just played so well, and we'll pull it up again, this well, 30 plus points in week 3, that I don't think, assuming that he just doesn't get hurt in week 4, I don't think that Brooks can just come in and immediately take this job away from him. And the week 4 matchup is juicy. I mean, the Carolina Panthers will play at home against a Bengals run defense that as of right now is averaging over 160 yards allowed per game as of this recording, which is just a great matchup. They're struggling without DJ Reader, who's no longer on the team to stop the run, so that's a great matchup. Then he'll get beneficial matchups against the Commanders and the Falcons moving so forward. That's when Jonathan Brooks would likely be back, but as of right now, Chuba Hubbard is a must-add. Now, I mentioned that Hubbard is the #1 waiver wire ad. Last week, it was Zach Charbonnet for us, who was available in over 50% of fantasy leagues. That's how you get on our waiver wire tiers and rankings, and he had a big week. I think 100-plus total yards. He found the end zone once or twice in that game. And so here's the thing. These are the waiver wire tiers and rankings. Now, a lot of people have always asked me, yeah, but where do these guys rank? In the comment section, I do that. I provide rankings and tiers for every single position, as well as a drops list. This is just one of the tools that's offered in my fantasy blueprint, because if you want to win your fantasy league, you just click this link right here, and you can get access to my fantasy blueprint through one of our 2 partners this year, absolutely risk-free. Nearly 20,000 people currently have access, so you can as well, and it's risk-free through one of our 2 partners. You might say, what does that mean? It simply means if you don't make your fantasy playoffs, it's a one-time payment of $10, but if you don't make your fantasy playoffs, I refund that right to you, assuming you sign up through one of our partners. You'll get access to the waiver wire rankings and tiers, weekly rankings and projections, matchup notes for every single player, rest of season rankings for trades, and a whole lot more by scanning this QR code or clicking the link in the description below, so you can schmack around your league mates. Go ahead and get that. Not now, but right now. Now let's talk about Emmanuel Wilson, who's available in over 95% of leagues. He doesn't even have a headshot on Player Profiler. This is the Packers' second-year player, an undrafted free agent, and I believe as of right now today, after what he did in week 3, he's a priority add in all league formats. Wilson gained some hype last training camp. He had a big preseason game of 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, but there was always A.J. Dillon there. There was always another running back paired with Aaron Jones last year to kind of take away from Wilson. And just for some background on Wilson, the type of runner he is, he's kind of a hard physical runner, 226 pounds, but he's shown an ability to be highly efficient so far this season. And before we get there, heading into this season, things were looking good for him. A.J. Dillon lands on the IR. You see Marshawn Lloyd, the 3rd-round pick, battling multiple injuries in camp, fumbling in camp, and right now Marshawn Lloyd once again lands on the IR. I think it was the PUP list earlier, so he's going to miss at least 3 more games. This is giving more opportunities to Wilson behind Josh Jacobs, and we saw that play out in a major way in week 3. And even entering week 3, we saw through the first 2 weeks, on a very limited sample of only like 12 to 15 touches, this guy was number 4 in true yards per carry on the season, top 20 in yards per touch, multiple explosive runs, and then he heads into week 3 and he puts up this performance. 14 total touches, 85 yards and a touchdown. He scores more fantasy points in this game than Josh Jacobs. He actually sees 14 opportunities in this game, is very similar to what Jacobs saw. I think it was like a 1 opportunity difference. And even the snaps were pretty similar, as you can see on PFF right here. Jacobs plays 33 snaps to Emmanuel Wilson playing 26. You go over to the opportunities, it's 14 carries for Jacobs, 12 for Emmanuel Wilson, but Wilson sees that extra target and reception in this game. So at least in week 3, there was no injury to Jacobs. This was a near 50-50 backfield, and Wilson looked good. And not only that, but this Packers offense without Jordan Love might be the most creative in the NFL right now, especially the run game, because of their head coach, Matt LaFleur. He's currently coaching his ass off. So kind of similar to what's going on with the Jets right now. You have Emmanuel Wilson producing as a flex option after week 3, and if anything was to happen to Josh Jacobs, so now Emmanuel Wilson has really no competition. Like Christopher Brooks is back there, no competition at all for just an RB1 workload in the Green Bay Packers offense. All right, now let's transition to a late-round rookie running back who actually saw his best usage of the season in week 3. And that's the Giants running back, 5th-round pick, Tyron Tracy, who saw his role expand in week 3. Like heading into this week, you can see right here, according to Fantasy Life, okay, he played 20% of the snaps. That's fine. He's a rookie. It makes sense. But he only saw 8% of the rush attempts. This equates to just 3 carries through 2 games. So that's not great. And it kind of makes sense because all offseason, Brian Daboll, the head coach, was saying that Devin Singletary, the veteran back that he coached for 3 seasons in Buffalo, was their guy, the guy that they trusted in all situations. He's their guy. And we saw that through the first 2 weeks of the season. Singletary was playing 80% of the snaps, was handling 75 to 85% of the backfield carries. So this was Singletary's backfield, and it still is. But according to PFF right here, in week 3, Tyron Tracy sees more usage, 21 snaps. This equated to 30% of the snaps, so the most that he's seen on the season. And you scroll over to his carries, 4 carries and 3 targets, so 7 opportunities compared to just 3 through the first 2 games. And again, you start to look at these things, and nobody's going to look at this and say, oh, 6 points from Tyron Tracy, that's somebody we should be adding in fantasy leagues or considering adding, especially in deeper leagues. But here's the big point. He had 7 touches. He came into this game with 3 on the year. He had 40 yards on those 7 touches. So he's coming into this game and averaging what? 7 yards per touch at this point? Or I guess it would be closer to 6 yards per touch. But also the other big important piece here was he saw 100% of the 2-minute offense snaps. That means that they're trusting the rookie more and more, and those are going to lead to more targets like it did in week 3 when he catches both targets for 17 yards in the 2-minute warning. This is something to keep an eye on, especially if you're in a team or a league that has 12 to 14 teams. Now, if you're not familiar with Tyron Tracy, he is a nearly 25-year-old back. So he's an older prospect because he spent a lot of time in college, but he has a good size here. He's 5'11", he's 209 pounds. But the big thing that I want to point out is his college production, because for the first 3.5 to 4.5 years, he was actually a wide receiver. He was a running back in high school. They said you should play wide receiver. He then transitions in 2022 back to the wide receiver position. You can see here just 17 rush attempts. He was kind of this hybrid player, but in 2023, he's a full-time running back for the first time ever since high school. And what does he do? He puts up 716 yards on 113 rush attempts. That's over 6 yards per carry. He led all the running backs in the Big Ten, and there's some good schools there. The Penn State running backs, Ohio State running backs. He led all of them in yards per carry. His first ever year as a running back since high school. And then the fella showed up to the NFL Combine, and having this interesting background, he was an explosive player while during his time in college. In that 1 year, had a lot of breakaway runs of 10 plus yards. He runs a 4.48 40 time, showing that he's also athletic. So he has nice speed, he has nice size, and he has the film in 1 year in college. So he starts to become somebody that's like, yeah, they're going to get drafted, and the Jets or the Giants took him in the 5th round of the draft. So all of this is important to keep in mind, because he is not only an explosive runner, but because of his wide receiver background, he's a nice pass catcher as well. And we saw a little bit of that in week 3. So he's a solid handcuff. The Giants offense, yes, it's a little bit up and down. Right now, it's looking up these last 2 weeks because of Malik Nabers and because of the fact that their offensive line actually looks stable. I'm not going to say it's an elite unit, but it looks stable right now. And if that's the case, Tyron Tracy is going to keep seeing a larger role. Singletary will continue to be the RB1, but if something happens to an aging veteran in Singletary, like this kind of been the theme of this video so far, Tracy then becomes a week in and week out flex play. Now, this next guy is also a rookie, but he's in a much better situation because he's starting to actually take the backfield away from his starter. And that's the Bucs 4th round rookie, Bucky Irving, who, yes, his role continued to be strong in week 3. Like, if you end up looking at the snaps, you'll see he played 18 snaps compared to 42 for Rachaad White. These 18 snaps, according to PFF, that's 32% of the snaps. But here's the thing. It ended up leading to 12 opportunities, 9 carries, 3 targets. That's more than Rachaad White had with 6 carries and 5 targets. And not only is it more than Rachaad White had, but again, for the second time this season, it was by far Bucky Irving outproducing Rachaad White. Because in week 3, Bucky Irving took these 12 opportunities. He translated them into 12 touches for 84 yards, averaging 7 yards per touch, 11.5 fantasy points, compared to one Rachaad White, who goes out there and he has, if we pull it up right here, 6 carries, 17 yards. Not great. Combines for his 6 carries and 11 catches, or 5 catches for 11 touches, 35 yards, averaging 3.2 yards per touch. Literally less than half as productive and efficient than his backfield running mate, the rookie Bucky Irving. And this isn't the first time that we've mentioned this, but now Rachaad White for like a year and a half has not been efficient. Not only last year was he barely efficient outside the top 50 running backs in yards per touch and yards per carry, but you can come right here. So far this season, 57th in true yards per carry, averaging less than 2 yards per carry. 4 yards per touch. He's getting saved by his receiving production, but even that's outside the top 40 running backs right now. And again, I mentioned it earlier. We've seen Bucky Irving now outproduce Rachaad White multiple weeks this season. The other one was week 1. Because in that week 1 game, Bucky Irving sees his 11 touches go for 76 yards. Again, he's averaging 7 yards per touch. In this game, I believe it was like just, 2 yards per touch for Rachaad White. And so far, if I pull up my friend Mason Dodd right here, he puts out this nice tweet. He says, so far this season, Rachaad White, 31 carries, 66 yards. Okay, so like 2 yards per carry. Bucky Irving, 25 carries, 145 yards. So on less carries, 7 less carries, he's going for more than double the production at this point. Again, this is something that the coaches are realizing. They're going to continue to see it. They love Bucky Irving throughout the entire camp, preseason, everything. They love this dude. They're going to give him more work, especially they're going to give him more work if this is the dichotomy of no production for Rachaad White while Bucky Irving is producing. Now, if you're not familiar with Bucky Irving, let me just give you a quick rundown on the 4th round rookie out of Oregon. He was a productive player in Oregon the last 2 years. Over the last 2 seasons, he was actually PFF's #1 graded rusher, and he had over 1,000 rushing yards each of these seasons. The big thing for him was this right here. He also has the ability to catch the ball. 31 catches, 53 catches. If you need some context, running backs in college, if they have a 20 reception season, based on how the colleges use running backs in the passing game and how many games they play, 20 receptions is good. He had 31 and 53. Now, he was in the Oregon offense, as you can see right here, led by Bo Nix. It was known as a check down offense, so it's kind of easy to get these targets, but he still got him. He still caught the balls, and he still put on film of what he could do after the catch, which at times it was pretty good. Now, I've been on record saying I wasn't the biggest fan of Buck Irving as a prospect. He's only 192 pounds, as you can see right here. Not only that, but he's also extremely slow relative to other backs his size. This right here, 27th percentile speed. A 4.55 is great if I ran that, but for a guy who's 192 pounds, it's a little bit, you need to start to see this in terms of a running back in the NFL compared to other guys his size. You need to see this in the 4.4s, ideally even to 4.3s for a back that small. But here's the thing. The coaches don't care about that, obviously, right now, and he's producing in the NFL, and it's not mattering right now because of his short area quickness and ability to run in between the tackles. And look, here's the thing for Buck Irving. He actually plays in a decent offense. Now, the Bucs didn't look all that great in week 3, but overall this season, they've looked good under new offensive coordinator Liam Cohen, but Baker Mayfield's looked solid. We know the wide receiver group with the veterans and even Jalen McMillan, somebody on the rise, is a talented offense. I think this is a spot behind their offensive line that for the most part the season has looked good as well. I think this is a spot for Buck Irving that if he continues to see more usage, definitely shouldn't be available on over 65% of waiver wires right now. All right, now we're starting to get to some of those deeper leagues because Roschon Johnson, the former Texas running back, we talked about one earlier in Jonathan Brooks, this running back right here in Roschon Johnson, available in over 99% of fantasy leagues, and in week 3, he made his season debut. He dealt with injuries in training camp. He started the season the first 2 weeks as a healthy scratch as Travis Homer, a veteran, was starting ahead of him. And of course, there was also DeAndre Swift, the man they gave a lot of money to this offseason. The Bears, the first running back signed in free agency, and then Khalil Herbert, an efficient runner. So it's kind of just been this messy backfield, but this is what we got heading into week 3. Travis Homer ended up going on IR, so he'll miss at least 4 weeks, which allowed one Roschon Johnson, this running back for the Bears who's been on the team now for, I believe, 2 seasons, that allowed him to see a larger role. And that's 2 seasons, including this year for Roschon Johnson. And look at this, right away in his season debut, plays 33 snaps, way more than Khalil Herbert, and just honestly not that far behind DeAndre Swift, who plays 48 snaps, and Swift for the 3rd straight week, his role is reducing because he has not been efficient. And you can see that inefficiency right here as Swift turns 15 opportunities and touches into just 42 yards, not even averaging 3 yards per touch, while Roschon in his debut takes 12 touches for 62 yards, actually looks good on them. He has 4 catches on 5 targets for 32 yards. This was kind of his calling card coming out of the NFL draft. He has the ability to catch passes, produce after the catch as well, and also pass protect, which is going to keep you on the field, especially right now when there's kind of a competition in this backfield brewing. So in his first game of the season, Roschon Johnson comes out and sees 40% of the opportunities splitting the backfield with Khalil Herbert a little bit and DeAndre Swift. And according to PFF, check this out right here. The pink is Roschon Johnson, the dark blue is DeAndre Swift. The 2-minute drill right here, Roschon Johnson, again, the back known for his pass catching abilities, he's playing 17 snaps in the 2-minute offense to just 5 for DeAndre Swift, and third downs, 10 snaps compared to just 5 total between Khalil Herbert and 1 DeAndre Swift. So what does this mean? It means Roschon Johnson is immediately the passing down back on this team. They trust him to catch passes and pass protect, like I said earlier. And if he starts seeing some of the early down work, well, then that's when he's seeing over 50% of the snaps and shouldn't be available in 99% of fantasy leagues. Now, this next guy is Rico Dowdle, who's available in about 55 to 60% of fantasy leagues. And I know if you're a sicko, if you're a diehard watching this, you're in the comments, he's not available in my league. Sal, let me put my glasses up. He's not available in my league. Yo, I'm tripping right now. I need the 4 a.m. coffee. I'm tripping right now with these little phrases. But look, I get it. Rico might not be available in your league, but I'm making this video because he's available in over 50% of leagues, so we have to call it out for the majority of people for who he is available for. And here's the thing. In this game, according to Mike Clay on Twitter, 32 snaps, so 46% of them went to Rico Dowdle, which doesn't sound like a lot compared to elite workhorse roles, but he's not that. That's why he's available on more than 50% of waivers. But look at this compared to his other backfield running mates. Zeke just 20% of the snaps and did not look good on these snaps. Deuce Vaughn just 7% of the snaps. So by far and away, Rico Dowdle was the guy being used here, and it showed based on his production. Because Dowdle ended up turning 11 touches into 56 yards here, so he's averaging over 5 yards per touch. He was a flex option for you, almost 9 fantasy points. But the big thing, for the 2nd straight week, he earns 5 targets, so good passing game usage, catches 3 of them for 24 yards. If he's going to continue to earn this type of usage in the passing game, he's going to be somebody who is by far the priority in this backfield, especially if those snaps continue to go up for him and drop for Zeke. And speaking of Zeke, he was not good in this game. I wouldn't be shocked if the 20% of the snaps even reduced more, because on his 4 touches, just just 12 total yards. Was not looking nice out there. I think they're starting to realize that they don't even need Zeke in pass protection, that they can trust Rico Dowdle there instead. And remember Dalvin Cook? I just want to bring up Dalvin Cook because everyone was like, oh, Dalvin Cook signed with the team. He's going to be such a big impact. I believe that's probably going to be the case with Kareem Hunt now. Signed with the Chiefs, such a big impact. Didn't even play in week 3, right? These are the things these veteran running backs, be very careful with them. Next up, I have to talk about Cam Akers because he is available in over 50% of leagues. And again, those people out there with their deeper leagues, we're going to get to even more guys. We've mentioned a couple, but more guys who are available in 99% of leagues after this. But for Cam Akers, I know it was a weird week for him. Joe Mixon could be coming back, but I will point out that Joe Mixon right here has the ankle injury, didn't practice. These DNPs did not practice on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. He was doubtful for the game. He ended up missing it. He didn't practice all week. Neither did Dameon Pierce with a hamstring injury, which is a very difficult injury for running backs to return from on time. So if those guys were to miss again, if they were to miss another week, it would be the Cam Akers show 100% heading into week 4. And you probably are disappointed that Akers only had 10 touches for 29 yards. Luckily, he had a touchdown reception that actually just saved you from not having a 3-point fantasy day out here. But he had that touchdown reception for you. And this was a game where the Vikings just boat raced, steamrolled the Texans. That's probably not going to happen again this season, that the Texans are losing by 2 to 3 scores all game. So in most weeks, you're going to see lighter boxes. It was the #1 run defense in Minnesota as well. So I'm not as concerned with this performance for Cam Akers because it was a weird and wonky game script. And if you look here, according to PFF, the early down usage, check this out. You see that blue up there? Majority of the time, the early down usage, especially in the first half before the blowout run kicked in and Cam Akers got pulled, he saw by far the majority of the early down usage. According to PFF, Cam Akers saw 29 of 32 early down carries before, or snaps, before the blowout. That's important, meaning he's the clear RB moving forward if Mixon and or Pierce were to miss. And before we keep going, over 65% of you are still not subscribed to this YouTube channel, so here's your urge to do so. On this channel, we have an agreement, the gentleman's agreement. You shake on it right here. If you find these videos helpful, and if you're watching to this point in the video, I think you do, then you hit the subscribe button. It takes literally 2 seconds and helps this channel out a ton. So agreement, gentleman's agreement, hit that subscribe button. The next guy who's available in 93% of leagues right now that I think is a perfect stash is the undrafted free agent last year, Keaton Mitchell out of East Carolina. He is still on the PUP list. He's expected, or at least they're saying he could come back by week 5. It might take a couple more weeks, but the reason you need to add this guy is why not pick him up and put him in your IR spot? The dude literally led the NFL, was better than Devon Achane last year, 7.1 yards per carry. He was a Devon Achane light, 8.7 yards per touch, was an explosive run machine. And like I said, just pick him up and put him in your IR spot. Every single league that I'm in right now, I believe if I have an IR spot in them, I have Keaton Mitchell in them right now, because why not? I mean, the dude literally did this last year. He started the season on the IR. He came back mid-season and he pops off for like 4, 5, 6 weeks for you, and he was a viable starter in a couple of those weeks. And I get it. If you look at this backfield right now, Derrick Henry off of his best game of the season. I'm a big Derrick Henry fan. I was this offseason. I have been this year. I set the buy low on him after week 1. Derrick Henry is still the RB1 in this backfield. Justice Hill is somebody that they like. They like enough to pay him a 2-year extension before week 3 for $6 million. I get that these guys are in this backfield, but if something happens to an aging 30-year-old Derrick Henry, then it's not going to just be the Justice Hill seeing 100% of the snap show. It's going to be Keaton Mitchell, the explosive run play machine. He's going to play 30, 40, 50% of the snaps, and on those, he's going to see a couple of 10-plus yard plays and a couple of touchdowns eventually. So add Keaton Mitchell, who, by the way, has 4.3 speed, so even if nothing happens to Derrick Henry, and we hope here that nothing happens to any running backs, but, you know, it's the nature of the game, an aging running back, you take a lot of hits, but even if nothing happens to Henry, 4.3 speed is going to be schemed into this offense. All right, now this next guy, I already got a couple of questions on Sunday night when I was preparing for this video about this next player, and I want to kind of clear up some things. Because Tyler Beatty, a former 6th-round pick in the NFL draft by the Ravens of all people, he was a 2022 pick. Tyler Beatty, this is a guy who now plays for the Denver Broncos, and based on the usage, if you just look at the box scores, 9 carries for 70 yards, led the backfield in carries, 4 more than Javonte, 4 more than Jaleel McLaughlin, averages 7.8 yards per touch, an explosive run of 43 yards. All of this looks really good for Tyler Beatty, Batty, however you say the last name. It's a great last name, right? But here's the thing. The fella did the majority of this work in blowout run. On the final drive, when it was a blowout, he had 6 carries on that drive. Now, he did have a couple of touches and snaps early on in the game, so that's important to point out. So again, a lot of that usage was just fake and blowout run. Backups were in the game, and also he's in a 3-headed backfield if he was to see some more usage with Bo Nix, who's a mobile quarterback. So I'm not too concerned about it of really trying to add Tyler Beatty. But if you're in one of these 14, 16 team leagues, it's worth considering because he did look good. He has a great college season on his resume in 2021, 1,600 rushing yards, 330 receiving yards, literally almost 2,000 total yards. He's a great pass catcher, 28 catches, 28-54. So this is a talented player. The problem is he just really can't pass protect. He's been a smaller running back. He's been in the NFL for now 3 years or so. Why hasn't he seen a bigger role? That's probably something to it. So I'm not interested in adding Tyler Beatty, but if you're in a deeper league, you can. I am interested in picking up and stashing Kendre Miller. Pretty similar to Keaton Mitchell. Why not add the guy who's on the PUP list? If you could put him in your IR spot, great. Because this is a guy in Kendre Miller who is a talented runner. He spent his final year at TCU breaking tackles like crazy and picking picking up yards after contact. And he fits into this new Clint Kubiak offense for the Saints, the offense that wants to run the ball like San Francisco outside zones. He fits into it great. And of course, Alvin Kamara is there, but Alvin Kamara is an aging back if he was to miss time. Behind him is really nobody. Jamal Williams will not threaten, in my opinion, a healthy Kendre Miller if and when he does get healthy. Now, the next guy I want to talk about is Tyler Algier, because kind of like we started this video with Braylon Allen, Algier's in a similar boat there. If something was to happen to Breece Hall, Braylon Allen's like a top 12 running back week in and week out. Well, if something happened to Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier has already proven that he could be a top 20 running back and a top 12 running back in some weeks. 2022 setting the Falcons rushing record with over 1,000 rushing yards. Last year still being efficient both in the running game and on his limited sample in the passing game with Bijan there. So Tyler Algier to me is one of the better handcuffs in fantasy football, yet he's available in like 85% of fantasy leagues. Now, another guy available in over 85% of leagues and actually over 95% of leagues is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I know what you're saying. Oh, but Carson Steele, the undrafted rookie, he had 17 carries for 72 yards. Okay, cool. Oh, everyone wants to say, oh, Kareem Hunt, I got him before waivers even started. I don't even know if he'll actually see a carry for this team this year. Maybe he'll see a couple. But all I'm saying is Clyde Edwards-Helaire is available in that many leagues with a proven track record of success in this offense at times. And his biggest competition is Samaje Perine, who looked okay in week 3, and Carson Steele, who again looked just okay, basically like he looks. I know he's not a fullback, but he looked like a fullback out there, averaging what, 4 yards per carry? So it's not an ideal situation for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So if and when he returns, because he is dealing with PTSD right now, it's not like he's coming into a starter workload, but he's only having this competition. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire has a proven history on this team. Maybe they say, you know what, we actually trust Clyde the most. We like Clyde. That's why we gave him a 1-year contract extension this offseason. We're going to give him some touches. And at that point, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is now looking like a valuable piece in a Kansas City Chiefs offense in that world that we're talking about, and he's available in 95% of leagues. Kamani Vidal is also available in 95%. He's available in 99% of leagues. He is a running back on the Los Angeles Chargers, and I think he is now starting to become a priority add in a lot of leagues because of this right here. J.K. Dobbins is the clear-cut running back one on this team. He handled by far the majority of the snaps. Gus Edwards only had 3 carries, and that's the reason here. Gus Edwards has looked really bad. Really bad, the aging Gus Edwards, who was once one of the most efficient running backs in the NFL for like a 3 or 4 year stretch with the Ravens. But Gus Edwards right now has looked bad. He only had 3 carries in week 3. He got phased out of the offense. And I think this could be the time we start to see Kamani Vidal become the RB2 on this team. Kamani Vidal, a rookie who can pass protect out of Troy, had a great season last year, highly productive. And if we see Gus Edwards get phased out and Kamani Vidal comes in, then you get Kamani Vidal being the RB2 in the backfield behind J.K. Dobbins, who has a ton of injury history. As the season goes on, that could potentially come into play. And it's a run-first offense behind a good offensive line, so the RB2 either way is valuable in that if we start to see him seeing snaps as soon as week 4, well, that's somebody you need to be adding, in my opinion, in a lot of leagues. So these are the must-add running backs that you need to be picking up in your fantasy leagues right now. And once the receiver video is out later in the week on Tuesday, maybe it's out right now, it'll pop up right here. Appreciate you all the time. Be sure to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you all in the next one.